I used to think that I would be fine with just one good hit. I remember back in college when I was singing and playing guitar in coffee shops, I would try to convince my audience, such as it was, probably my parents, my roommate, and a handful of poor random victims who I'd coerced into coming to see me. I would try to convince them all that if we could just get together, we could make it happen. We could get me a hit. Just one hit, I said. I don't even need two of them, just one. It could even be a novelty song, I said. I don't care. I'll take it and I'll agree to sing it every time I take the stage for the rest of my life. I'll agree to be defined by it, whatever it is. Even if it's just a silly little song that I knock out in 10 minutes, I'll concede that even if I one day find myself playing at Carnegie Hall, backed by an orchestra, standing next to my heroes, I will likely have to sing this hit. But in exchange for that, I will buy myself some freedom. I used to say that. But then again, I used to say a lot of things. Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Paula Cole is not defined by her early hits, but she did have them. It wasn't her first record, Harbinger, but rather her second one, This Fire, that earned her a Grammy Award for Best New Artist. Isn't that always the way? By the time you're new, you're already a seasoned veteran. And maybe even more notable than her Best New Artist Grammy, she received a second Grammy nomination for Producer of the Year that same year. She had produced the album, and the nomination made her the first individual woman ever to be nominated in that category. This Fire contained her two biggest hits, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And I Don't Want to Wait, which was later used as the theme song for the TV show Dawson's Creek. These are songs that really have become part of the fabric of that decade.
And now let's find out who this year's Best New Artist will be.
There's a clip on YouTube of a 28-year-old Paula Cole accepting her Grammy Award from Aretha Franklin.
Paula Cole!
All right.
That year she beat out Fiona Apple, Erykah Badu, Puff Daddy, and Hanson for Best New Artist. Her brief speech, where she thanks a small handful of artists who had influenced her, was itself a kind of harbinger for what would follow.
And lastly, I'd love to thank some of the artists that inspired me so deeply and gave me joy in life. Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, Bob Marley, Al Green, Kate Bush. Thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Because while she was a folky, poetic singer-songwriter who hailed from Massachusetts, part of a small group of female artists who launched the Lilith Fair Festival, and a singer who had followed both Kate Bush and Sinead O'Connor in Peter Gabriel's band, she was not easily contained or confined by any real category. She had gone to Berklee College of Music to study jazz singing and then turned down an offer to sign with GRP Records in the early 90s. It's a move that would have oriented her more towards a contemporary, even smooth jazz audience. So although she was awarded Best New Artist for appearing to be one kind of thing, the truth was a little harder to define. She followed her award-winning album with a more experimental one called Amen, a major stylistic departure that experimented with neo-soul and hip-hop, and where she was joined by DJ Premier and T-Boz from the group TLC, in addition to her regular creative partners like Jay Belleros on drums, Tony Levin on bass, and Kevin Barry on guitar. She was in fact so committed to her musicians at that time that the album was officially credited to the Paula Cole Band, rather than simply just to Paula Cole. It was as if she was trying to signal to her audience, it's a group, it's a band, it's not just me. But in some ways, it was just her. Amen was not as commercially successful as the album before, and it would be 8 years until she released another solo album. She took time to raise her daughter and to reset. She says simply that she felt unseen for many years. During that period, she actually had recorded an album that her label refused to release. So not surprisingly, when she returned to record making, eventually, she started her own label. Since 2007, she's been on a steady schedule, releasing a new album every 2 or 3 years and solidifying herself as a truth teller, a provocateur, a feminist, a rebel, and a brilliant autobiographical writer who has pushed for personal honesty and social change. In 2016, she re-recorded her two big hits, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And I Don't Want to Wait, recreating the sound of both songs almost identically, a practice that's gained more notoriety recently thanks to Taylor Swift. Earlier this year, she released Low, her 11th studio album, and the first album of original compositions in 5 years. It's a deeply personal statement, written and produced by Cole and joined by her excellent band.
I'm sorry, I've been so cold. I'm guarding and I'm hardening bone. At times it feels impossible to trust again.
Some songwriters write autobiographical confessions. Others write poetic statements. Still others write political calls to arms. Paula Cole does all of the above. The first single from the album, The Replacements and Dinosaur Jr., processed the loss of her friend and early collaborator Mark Hutchins, a companion who she had lost touch with for years, only to reconnect shortly before he passed away. Paula's work can be serious. She often deals in heavy subjects, but she's also surprisingly light, funny, quick to laugh, incredibly self-reflective, a wordsmith who is herself an open book. We met earlier this year to talk about her life and career, the power of the beginner's mind, the distinction she sees between artists and entertainers, the feeling of being pregnant with song, speaking for those who cannot speak, navigating a life in the music business, and learning from a younger generation. Third-story.com is the place to visit the archive. Hundreds of deep-diving conversations like this one, including episodes with some of Paula Cole's contemporaries like Jonathan Brooke, Ani DeFranco, and Duncan Sheik. You can find all my socials there too and follow me wherever you like. Then check out the new Substack. It's leosidran.substack.com. Remember that The Third Story is made in collaboration with WBGO Studios. Visit wbgo.org/studios to find out more about all their award-winning content. And if you stick around until the end of the episode, there's a little surprise for you. Here's me and Paula Cole talking it down. Paula Cole, I am so excited to meet you.
Likewise.
I want to ask you about something that I saw you say on your Instagram this week, which is that you feel that this year is going to be a more positive year than last year, that you're feeling something in the air that is pointing towards positivity. So I guess the place to start is just to check in and see, what have you been dealing with and what are you looking towards this year?
Maybe I'm being optimistic. Maybe I should be more cautious. But I want to throw my caution to the wind. I mean, 2023 was a very insulated year for me. My mom has not been well. And so I just stepped off of touring for a minute. And I hadn't done that for a long time. 17 years, I think it was. 16 or 17 years. I'd not stopped touring. So I took time off when I had my daughter. Mm-hmm. I took a hiatus then. And then I took some time for my mom. And she's doing better, which gave me the confidence to just say, I want to work. I choose the work. I miss music profoundly. I miss my musicians, my brothers in arms. It's like, if you don't use this proclivity, this gift, this musical thing that we possess, it's like it becomes an evil puppet head within, torturing you. It is therapy. And so I'm so grateful. Probably more grateful than ever to arrive back at the music. And it just feels like Gen Z is growing up. That's my daughter's and my kids' generation. I understand them really well. And I feel like they understand me, perhaps better than some other generations have understood me. So,
including your own, you think?
Yeah. I think musicians understand me. So my musical peers, I think they understand me. Not that I can ever understand this, right? Not that I can ever know. I don't, but I've just been through the ups and downs so much of being cool and uncool and cool and uncool and working and then not working and working and not working, not being invited to the table and so on and so forth. And looking back on it, I can say that I'm pretty satisfied with my artistic choices. I feel like I've been true to myself. And that's all you can do is leave great art at the end of a lifetime.
Reflecting on your career as I prepared to talk to you, I thought Paula Cole might have the career, the one that you hope to have. And maybe from your point of view, it doesn't feel that way at all. And so I don't mean in any way to say that it's been easy or a walk in the park or anything, only to say that you continue to tour if you want to and record and be part of the conversation, that you had commercial success, the likes of which most artists would aspire to have, that you received the accolades and the respect of the community, and that you're 30 years into this and continue to work. I mean, that's like ticking a lot of the boxes that, some people maybe burn bright, but then they fall away and they don't know what to do with themselves. Others toil in obscurity. I know that this record, Low, is in many ways dedicated to a friend of yours who I think did kind of live in obscurity and not find the recognition that maybe he would have. But in any case, just to say, I think you have a career that is maybe the ultimate.
That is new to be told that. honestly, I feel like I'm here despite my career. I'm here despite my hits, despite my management, despite my record labels. And a lot of people viewed me as that two-hit wonder, big, bright ascension and a big crash. And if I had just stayed there, if you don't dust yourself off and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be kind of true to your inner voice and integrity of what you really are, then yes, you will be forever thought of as that way. And I am a tortoise. I'm not a hare. I'm in it for the long road. And it bothered me deeply that I was being perceived as such and that the hits became so big. That was extremely ill-fitting to this introvert. I needed to shed it. I needed to stop. And so I stopped. I made a very different third record, which confounded a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like it. I do think it was a little ahead of its time. It weaved in a lot of hip-hop influences and jazz and soul influences with what I do. And I don't even know how to define my music because it is a blend. Like I'm a musician who grew up with a dad who played bass on polka gigs on weekends and then would play Duke Ellington on the piano and folk songs, like the whole books and books of standards and folk songs at home. I was exposed to so much music and we made music at home. So it didn't occur to me that I couldn't weave in DJ Premier with melodies that might be like something out of a 32-bar standard or, I just enjoyed the melange, the quilt.
City, living in the kennel and looking big and pretty. Meet the munch for business lunch, but your feet bleed under the table.
I saw recently the video of you accepting the Grammy, and you thanked a handful of artists who informed you, all of whom would point to the third record. You thanked Aretha Franklin, mostly black artists. I mean, basically you said, this is kind of where my heart is musically. And then you made a record that sort of spoke to that in a lot of ways.
That's right.
And looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, you could sort of see that you were letting people know where your heart was, but it still was a surprise because you were this young folky girl who, didn't necessarily look the part.
I didn't look the part, and they wanted boxes.
Yeah.
They wanted me to stay making the same predictable music, and we all evolve as musicians. And yeah, I think I dedicated that one to Marvin Gaye. I mean, his What's Going On also was a breakthrough album. His label hated it when he made it.
You said that the rapid ascension, the fast rise, the massive success of those hits was difficult for you. You're an introvert. Your pace is slower. Do you like those songs? Did you struggle at any point with having to be followed around by those songs?
I do like the songs. Yeah. I think that there's nothing out there like Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And if you really listen to it musically, it's kind of in between, like it's a few cents in between the tuning of any keys, because we tracked Jay Bellerose on drums, by the way, for this Fire. And Jay and I tracked all the drums, pianos, keyboards, all the vocals, all the background vocals, all of our overdubs in 2.5 days. I didn't know it, but my Juno was like a few cents out of tune. And we recorded to a pad on the Juno. Greg Leese, he was new to me. I heard him on Katie Lang's Ingenue album. I loved what he did. He played all the guitars on that album, and he had to tune to the keyboard patch because all my vocals were down. No bass on that song. It's just and that guitar comp is extremely complicated. My engineer left. I was alone for that comp till the wee hours. I mean, it's so beautifully layered with the pedal steel and the guitars.
You go have a beat.
It's gorgeous. I think it's a gorgeous guitar piece.
My John Wayne, where is my fairy song? Where is my happy ending? Where have all the cowboys gone?
The message was complicated. Some people take it at face value in a fundamentalist approach to the word, and some people understand wit and irony.
I heard, yeah. I mean, I think it belongs to that category of great misunderstood songs. I heard this interview that you did with a colleague of mine at WBGO last week, and you talked about with Doug, and you talked about why you had shied away from singing standards for a while, and part of it you said was that lyrically it just didn't feel authentic to you, that these lyrics often were written by men and they supported a sort of very patriarchy forward vision of what a woman's role is. And then you write this song that on the surface is also supporting that same premise.
I guess so, yes.
But
Yes.
in an ironic way.
Right. And I was very moved by XTC's clever lyric writing at the time. And I thought, I love how it kind of is almost comedic at times.
Dear God, sorry to disturb you, but I feel that I should be heard loud and clear. We all need a big reduction in amount of tears. All the people that you made in your image sit on fighting in the street, 'cause they can't make opinions meet about God. I can't believe in you.
I don't really hear much of that by women. And then it led to my thinking about where have all the cowboys gone, which was, it definitely spilled out on the lyrical journalistic page first, and then the music started as like a bum 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 rumba kind of feel, which nobody liked.
Yeah.
And the demo stayed in the closet for years.
Really?
And then I took it out because I believed in the song.
Yeah.
Added a bridge and added the catchy BVs and more of like a Ringo Starr reprise of Sgt. Pepper. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, catch, boom, boom, catch,
Yeah.
boom, which Jay could do so beautifully. And then everyone danced excitedly about the song, and it just took off. And I wish I played guitar better. Ironically, I'm 55 and I'm like learning how to play guitar now. It's so nuts, but I love beginner mindset and it's healthy for me, and I'm building up my calluses, and my goal is to be able to play that song myself. So I wish I'll get there on that one. Otherwise I play like with my thumbs and open tunings. I Don't Want to Wait, the other song, it just plays itself. It just is so easy and it's so melodic, and people love it that you can't help get infected and pierced by the joy of it now. So that's wonderful. A lot of people have covered it and covered these both songs.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. I want to know right now, what will it be? I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. Will it be? Yes, so will it be? Sorry.
You're right. The thing about I Don't Want to Wait also is that, which we all experience as people who listen to music, and some of us also get to experience it as people who make it, that when a listener is engaging in that song, they're bringing some life experience to it, some time in their life when they heard it, or they remember hearing it, or they have shared it, or you know what I mean? So it's like, not only does it bring joy because it's musically may bring joy, but also because people are attaching all this life experience to it.
That's right. And again, people don't know what I'm singing about.
Yeah.
That happens over and over, funny enough. Like when Herbie Hancock and Annie Lennox covered Hush, 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 he had to call me from the session because they didn't know what the lyrics were about and they wanted to know. And I tend to write poetically. There's a lot of interpretation that could be had from the blank lyric.
White arms losing their strength and form. 60-year man on 20-year-old skin. Skeleton, your eyes have lost their
your daddy's touch. Sleep, 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 says the 100th sheep.
So the lyrics were important to me when I was singing standards, and they felt ill-fitting. And I also felt ill-fitting in the sense that I was a white girl singing an art form that really belonged to Black Americans. And I had imposter syndrome, and it was complicated for me. And I loved it so much. And it's not that they, like, people were supportive of me, but I didn't know how to move through that. And I began therapy, and I was starting to open up about my feelings, and it would come into the music. So the lyrics and the music didn't quite sound like jazz, like a 32-bar typical jazz standard. It was something else. It was definitely jazz influenced. And my first label that offered me a deal was GRP, which I said no to. It just didn't feel right. I'm glad I listened to my body about that one.
Incredible that you would say no to a record deal at that time in your life, particularly because you had gone to Berkeley and were studying jazz. And I mean, there were so many elements of what you had done already that would maybe have pointed you towards saying yes to that.
I definitely had a few people telling me I was crazy to decline it. And I had to go and waitress at the MIT faculty club after that and just go back to zero and washing pots and pans at the Tassajara Bakery in San Francisco. Not easy, but I just didn't feel it. It didn't feel right. And I was profoundly grateful for it because it also was a confirmation, right, to keep doing what I do.
That's true. I mean, if nothing else, it was somebody saying, we believe in you. And as long as you don't think it's your only chance, like if you see it as, okay, if this came, then something else will come for me too.
That was my hope.
Yeah. And it was true.
And I was listening at the time. I mean, this was like the late 80s, like 1990. I'm still in college. So there was Suzanne Vega's first album and Tracy Chapman. So these were truth tellers. Yes, a little more folk. But then there was Kate Bush too, and a truth teller and a narrator of story in a very poetic way, and outlandish and brave and self-producing. So there were these fantastic role models for me that gave me enough of a light and hope.
Was Kate Bush a role model for you?
Oh, God, yes. Actually, she's the only white person I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Of the artists who gave me joy and inspiration.
Kate Bush.
I have to say that when you thanked Kate Bush, I guess I read it as a nod to your Peter Gabriel experience. And it's interesting that you name Kate Bush because you then, one of your early opportunities, maybe the first really huge opportunity other than this GRP thing that you turned down, was being called to sing with Peter Gabriel, including her sort of iconic song that she sang with him. And that sort of launched you in a way.
Don't give up, you still have friends. Don't give up, you're not beaten yet. Don't give up, I know you can make it good.
It was an incredible opportunity. And again, things were happening so quickly and kind of precipitously. Yeah. Peter heard the unreleased version of Harbinger, my first album, and through Kevin Killen, who produced it and was friends with Peter. And Sinead O'Connor was leaving the tour, and he asked me, he left me a message on my reel-to-reel mini cassette recording machine to join his tour. So I flew to Mannheim, Germany, and was thrown out in front of 16,000 Germans, and it all happened very quickly. And what a tremendous experience. And that song is absolutely one of my favorite ballads out there. It's up there with all the favorite ballads of my life. And I remember singing that song in my dorm room, like just so deeply connected to it, feeling like I needed to sing it in the world. That was magic that I was being asked to do so by a hero of mine.
Do you remember what you were doing before you came home and listened to that answering machine message? I mean, do you have a memory of that day of hearing the message?
The answering machine was in San Francisco, and I was in New York. So a roommate called Kevin Killen's fiance at the time, Barry, and she gave me the message. It was on a yellow sticky note. I'll never forget it. It had like 15 exclamation points on it. And we were probably recording overdubs or mastering the album. We were still in the album when that was happening. Sure, that was an incredible experience. And so I joined the tour, and I would tour with Peter in arenas, and then I'd fly home to the States. My album was released in 94, and I would play coffee houses with Jerry Leonard on guitar, and we would drive all around the States in a rental Cadillac because the boot was big enough to fit an entire PA. You could set up anywhere, in a train station and coffee houses, and I just began growing it. And so that was the beginning.
Of all of the places that I went to try to understand you or know about you before we talked, I actually found so much in your new record. And I think you shared so much in the opening song of Following the Moon. Your opening line is that if this is true, that your mother worried for you because you had too much ambition or you aimed too high.
Mother was afraid for me. I dreamed too big, always biting off more than I could chew. No road map for a hopeless sinner, a feckless leader, just wandering and stumbling through. Seeking the truth, I read the Bible, but I do not feel the word the way some folks they feel the word. Seeking my heart, I hear the silent way inside the way migrations follow the moon.
I get this feeling talking to you that there's this moment where Peter Gabriel calls you and you're flying back and forth and you're going to put your first record out and all of these things are happening. But what I wonder is, like, were you sort of thinking, well, yeah, this is what I want. This is supposed to happen. These are the things that are meant to happen to me.
I was believing it even when I was young, and on front beach of Rockport, Massachusetts, in my little bikini, declaring that I was going to be a star. Which is laughable and embarrassing, but like, what do you do with that when you're a mom and your little daughter is doing that? You're going to probably try to temper that a little bit. And I was big. I was just big. And that was, we could go into this. Like, I used to be alone a lot as a little kid, and I'd be alone a lot in the yard. And I was new to speech, and I would sing songs. And my mom would tie a rope around my waist to the tree and leave me out all day. And I would just say, so big, so big. And I think, and then she jokes like that she didn't want me to end up in jail,
Sure.
or run away.
Because you're from the tip of the end of Massachusetts. There's nothing out there. You're just out there kind of like so far removed from any bigness, right?
Well, when I was alone in the yard a lot, tied to the tree, that was in our Ithaca, New York days. Then we moved to Rockport, but my dad was he was studying entomology at Cornell, and we lived in a trailer. My sister would go off to kindergarten, and I would be home alone. And my mom wanted to work on her art projects. And she has these incredible art projects from that time. And I felt lonely, like I wanted to either be with my mom or have friends, but I didn't have friends. So I got used to being alone a lot. And so I think I would soothe myself by singing. And so I would make up songs to put myself to sleep and just came up with a range. And I just think I dreamed really big and felt a profound connection to music, certainly. And my dad would make music in the house and I would sing. I was a little canary. And then, we didn't know, though. If you're insular and you live at the end of the earth, you don't know if your kid has talent. But then they started sending me away to like jazz camps or whatever. And I would come home with awards and things and scholarship to Berkeley. And
you started going to Berkeley in high school? You would drive to Berkeley to take classes?
Yeah, you know that. Thanks for knowing that. So I went as a junior for camp and then
Yeah.
came back with a scholarship and the encouragement to continue studying while I was still in high school. So I would drive to study with Bob Stoloff, and he was a trumpeter and a jazz drummer,
Yeah.
also a vocalist, but like a highly improvisational vocalist.
Yeah.
And he would like sit in with Bobby McFerrin in the Vocal Summit stuff with Ursula Dudziak and these incredible vocal improvisers.
Yeah.
So he would have me reading like drum exercises out of Ted Reed's Syncopation
Yeah.
and funny trumpet exercises that I can't do anymore, but like ba 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 ba, trying to expand over the octave and like nail notes with big jumps, and then started really pushing me into this standard real book.
Yeah.
And that's when I really like learned how to comp chords and would just go through the alphabet of the real book
Yes.
and learn songs and play them on the piano. And I would learn all these standards without even hearing the greats sing them. I learned them by reading them.
You learned the structure of them. You learned how they
Yeah.
were organized and put together.
Yeah, the chords and the melodies and the lyrics. It's like there was continual affirmation from the universe and from teachers. When my parents were being cautious and protective, understandably, and honestly, I would not wish the music business on my loved ones either. I would not. My dad was like a pickup musician,
Right.
but he knew that it was going to be a hard life.
Yeah.
And it is a hard life.
Yes.
So I understand their fear and their caution,
Yeah.
and they tried to beat that out of me a little bit. But then Bob Stoloff actually went up to my parents and said, "You have to let her go into music." So I was grateful for that encouragement. I really needed it, and my parents needed a nudge.
From somebody,
Yeah.
somebody who was professional, somebody outside of their world.
Yeah. And so I went to Berkeley after that, and then I met Jay
Yeah.
and Kevin Barry and these incredible musicians that are still my friends and are with me on so many albums now.
It has been noted that you produced, you were nominated as as producer of the year, and it was a big deal, particularly because there had never been a woman who was nominated exclusively, not as part of a team, but as the producer. And like, that's a really big deal. But what I haven't heard is like how you got into that, how you figured out how to be a producer, that you wanted to be a producer, or how you unlocked that part of yourself. One thing is to be a songwriter and to be a singer and study these trumpet exercises and all that stuff. But the other thing is like, well, at what point did production enter the process of what you were doing? And what were you doing?
Again, Mark Hutchins taught me so much. I don't think I could have made that call without his guidance and influence, his love and support. And then I was so honored to work with Kevin Killen on Harbinger. I learned so much.
And were you just wide-eyed watching the whole thing?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. I was in awe, and I wanted to be good. And then I did the Gabriel tour, and I kept meeting people, and I was just sponge taking it all in. I had my songs for the second album. I even knew the sequence. But the first attempt of recording of what would be This Fire, it just wasn't going as I felt it in my heart. And I love Kevin, but we were at an impasse, and I had to make that really hard call to move away from working with him. And I never, ever want that to be a slight to him, because he's brilliant, and I wouldn't be without who I am without him. But I also needed to make a change, and it hurt the friendship. It was a very, very hard thing to do, to say, I need to stop. And I went to the record company, and I think I was realizing I know what I want. I don't want to have to explain it to somebody who then reinterprets it. So I want my vision straight to tape. We're still working to 2-inch then. So then I just decided to be brave and say, I want to produce this myself. I didn't realize it was such a big deal. I didn't. I was just naive.
I mean, it is a big deal, and then also maybe it isn't, in the same way that it's easy to recognize that genre isn't real. That genre is a construct that is kind of superimposed on us.
Absolutely.
But maybe so are the roles of artist, producer, that's part of a structure that supports a business model.
Absolutely. That's how well said. It was a business model, and it was a big time business model. It was making sausage. It was. And for you to be a young woman, you were just automatically paired with a seasoned older man who would treated you a little bit patronizingly, a little bit, you know, in an infantile way. We were infantilized through that process, but that was the way it was done. And I didn't want that. It felt so ill-fitting. I didn't want to be paired with an older male producer. It was just so predictable. I just wanted to try it. Also, like, I was making so many demos that sounded great, and then I'd listen to what we were trying to make, and it wasn't as groovin'.
Did you have like an 8-track, or what were you making demos on at home?
It depended, because the at the time the technology was changing so quickly.
Yeah.
So when I was with Mark Hutchins at home, we were using Vision software, which I really knew.
High school, I had Vision opcode.
Oh,
Yeah.
I could set the whole thing up. And also to like, we worked on a TSR-8 Tascam, and we would combine the two. But then we moved to ADAT.
Yep.
And I figured that out. But then it moved to Pro Tools, and by the time Pro Tools hit, I was working so much that I didn't have the time to be doing those demos. So then I started hiring engineers. Or Jerry Leonard was a fine producer and engineer at home, so we were doing a lot of things at home. And just those things that we were recording, like literally in our bedroom and in the apartment. And you can literally hear at the beginning of Carmen, because we kept the demo of that song Carmen, because I ended up saying, no, I want to produce myself, and I'm going to actually use this demo of Carmen because nothing beats it.
Yeah.
You know, my cat, if you listen to the track, you hear this little noise at the beginning, and it's my cat stepping on one of Jay's, like, I don't know, it was like a brush, one of his brushes on the floor. It's ambient noise. That's part of the beauty of it. It's a live take in an ambient setting. There's no baffling. There's no muffling. It's really ambient. There's room noise. And you hear my cat in the apartment.
Carmen, I don't know if I can go back. Carmen, I'll never be the same again. Carmen, Carmen, Carmen.
And this is in San Francisco, the apartment in San Francisco?
I had moved to New York,
Uh-huh.
and so it was in New York on West 15th, 320 West 15th, apartment 2.
Now people are going to be lined up around West 15th Street taking pictures. So can you tell me about Mark a little bit? I mean, I just don't know his name. I tried to find information about him, and I think you spoke the truth in your lyric that he didn't have a chance to be known. I forget what in the second verse of the song you say you didn't get a shot, or you didn't.
Yeah, he didn't have the career that he deserved.
Yeah.
Actually, when I was signed to Imago, which was this very left of center label, I mean, Amy Mann was there with her first solo album, and Henry Rollins. So it was very boutique left of center album there, label there. I asked that Mark and I produce it together. I think that would have been an awesome album, but he was an unknown, and they didn't want that. And I learned a lot from Kevin, and I wouldn't have the Gabriel gig without Kevin Killen.
Yeah.
I owe him so much. But sadly, you know, I wasn't able to continue on my path working with Mark. And we actually wanted to make some duo albums too.
Were you a couple?
We were.
Yeah. All
the
through this
time.
period? Yeah.
Leading up to that. And then with the label not supporting our creative collaboration, and I'm being sent out to do things, it was harder and harder to keep the relationship together. So there was a natural parting.
Do you think he resented in some way that you...
Probably he was hurt for a while. You know, I tried to bring all my tribe with me.
Yeah.
At the time, like, so this was the early 90s. I think I signed to Imago in 92. It's like climbing Mount Everest, getting a record deal then. You know, it's like you're so lucky if you get to the top and you get a deal, let alone whatever else happens. And I had these brilliant people that helped me get to that point. I wanted to bring them with me. But you have all these other vectors of influence, label, people that want to bring in their people, their producers, producers who want to bring in their musicians. So it was compromise after compromise. And that probably gave me an indication, too, of how I wanted to produce it myself eventually.
Yeah.
So the label did not want me to work with an unknown, you know. And I also really looked forward to making duo work. We were going to be called Moist and Creamy.
Whoa. Whoa.
Because everybody hates it so much that we thought it was fucking funny.
Well,
you know,
it's memorable. It sticks.
and it would totally have like blended, like we would have blended all those fantastic early alternative influences I'm talking about in the Replacements and Dinosaur Jr. and a lot of early hip hop too.
Yeah.
We really
Benita
love that.
Applebaum. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
First I just heard the record and I heard that and I was like, what is she why is she saying, what is she talking about Benita Applebaum? And then I read the lyrics.
Benita, Benita, Benita.
Benita.
Hey, Benita, glad to meet you. For the kind of stunning you miss, I must beseech you. Hey, being with you is a top priority. Ain't no need to question the authority.
And then when I worked with Kevin, like he wanted his people and I wanted my people, and I couldn't bring all my people. Like I tried to bring in Paul Bryan, who now plays bass with Amy Mann and is a brilliant producer too. And he was mad at me, I tried to bring in everybody and I fought. I got in Jay and I got in Kevin Barry, and I'm so grateful. And they've had tremendous careers.
Well, that's what's funny is that they did you the favor of letting you bring Jay in, but you did them the favor of bringing Jay in also. I mean, you brought in these great musicians with you.
Absolutely, that now have fabulous careers.
Yeah.
And I learned about Jerry Leonard and Paul Bushnell because Kevin Killen brought these incredible gentlemen in. So, and they changed my life too. Their musicianship was just so beautiful. So it was all good. But yeah, you can't always bring everybody. I tried. And I tried to bring in Mark. And that's a sad thing. Our path was forked at that point, just I'm now traveling all over the place with Peter. And so.
And he's sitting here
Yeah.
watching you.
Yeah.
And did you stay in touch over the years?
We didn't for a while. We did for a bit and then not. And then towards the end of his life, we started communicating again. It was joyful. Oh, I was hoping to meet his kids and to see him again in New York. He was working for the Colbert Show.
Oh,
Yeah.
I work for that show sometimes.
Do you
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
He died, I think, in 2016.
Yeah, I looked at it a while ago, yes. But something about his death sparked a desire in you to go back and, I don't know, to thank him or to recognize him? Or what was it about that experience that, I mean, there's a lot of loss in our lives, and there
That's
is,
right.
but there was something about that one that it seems like it unlocked something for you.
I think the older I got, maybe the closer my own parents get to their end. They're still with us, but, it's just weighs heavy on the mind, and I appreciate these people, and it was just in me. It felt like a pregnant feeling almost. And that's sometimes the way songs feel. Like you feel subconsciously like ill at ease, like there's a seed growing in you. It's a pregnant feeling. And I put up paper on the wall in my little creative home studio room, and I'll just write things up on the wall. And I just felt I needed to write something for Mark. And it needed to be fun and irreverent. He was those things. And it came out like an easy, bouncy blues in D minor. Fun to play. It works well, especially on electric piano, a Wurlitzer or a Rhodes.
Yep.
Kind of funky. Then all the litany of the early 90s artists just started rolling. Bands that people might not associate with me, but like they were part of me.
The more you live, the more you lose. I lost you far too young. I need to return back all of your demos you made when you were 21. We were just lovers, more like brothers. I was evil and you were Cain. We put all of glory into the music. Every day another song. You showed me the replacements and Dinosaur Jr. and Beatles, yes, you prefer Johnny. Ecstasy and Daniel and Walt and Benita Applebaum.
It was exploratory and it was dark too. It was like, also I learned of PJ Harvey, like Dry and her first album, and that was influential to me. I brought that song to the studio and we recorded Low. So we're at the Village in LA. Mark Piersante's engineering, Jay Bellerose on the drums, Ross Gallagher on upright and electric bass. I've got Chris Bruce on guitars and Rich Hinman on guitars and pedal steel. And this is the first time we're playing The Replacements and Dinosaur Jr. live together in a room. And it's like, oh my God, everybody's just like, their heads are bopping. And we're all looking around at each other like, yeah, this is really, there's a vibration here. It feels fantastic.
Yeah. It's a song that memorializes or remembers somebody. It's motivated by something very serious, and it's a total groove, which is wonderful, because there's actually some other really heavy songs on the record that are as heavy in terms of the thematic material or more or heavier, and are also heavy musically. This one is very light, even though you're remembering somebody who passed, and you're saying, you went to, people don't get to know who you were.
Yeah, I needed to acknowledge his influence in my life.
I wish the world knew who you were. A brilliant producer who never even had a single day in the sun.
You talk about how it was a pregnant feeling and then it came. Kenny Werner, that is a jazz piano player who's written these wonderful books on improvisation.
I know that.
And
I know him. Effortless Mastery.
But I saw him say once, it should feel like you're farting when you're improvising. It should feel like you just, got it out, And I feel like in a way that's kind of like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's sort of that same feeling of like, this thing just needs to come out and it's going to feel better once it comes out.
I love him. And I love his book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we do need to relax, let it go. Yeah. You get that feeling. There's a song there, or maybe it takes years of processing something, or maybe somebody died, or maybe you're not doing well because you're guarded and constipated.
Yeah. Creatively constipated
that's
or whatever.
Right.
I love that you use these bands, that your band is a part of your sound, really.
I never wanted to be a solo artist. Yeah. I wanted to be Moist and Creamy or Paula Cole Band.
Right, well, that's right. You were Paula Cole Band. I mean, that was a choice that you made at a certain point. To tell an audience, it's not just me, it's us.
Oh, yeah. I always wanted that. I wouldn't be here without my beautiful brothers. Jay's belief in me all those years. They raised me musically. We raised each other musically.
Beyond the relationship with your musical brothers, there's the relationship with your musical sisters. When I talk about your career being sort of the ultimate career, you also sort of participated in the creation of this other movement that we look back on now as kind of defining a generation of female artists. The first proto Lilith Fair tour you were on, and you helped to be responsible for that community and that scene.
I was so fortunate to be in that place at that time. And again, I think my naivete comes to play. I think being raised in a musical household for so long that I felt really comfortable in myself as a musician. And my naivete, what that leads to is me just speaking truths without knowing that it's anything radical. Like I would just say things. So like I want to produce my own album.
Yeah.
Or I'd say to the audience that was there for Sarah McLachlan and I'm opening for her in 95 on her Fumbling Towards Ecstasy tour. I'd say, in my experience, I just don't see women opening for women. I don't even see DJs allowed to play two women back to back in a single hour on a radio program. It's just, this doesn't happen. And I'm really, really grateful to be here. And that's, to me, like those naive statements then rippled through the audience like electricity. And then it was this thunderous applause. So much so that it felt like there's something here. There's some zeitgeist that it's triggering to be speaking about this truth. So I began saying it every night, began raising consciousness. And it led to more things. It led to prototypes of Lilith Fair, which became Lilith Fair, which became incredible.
And what were the discussions like? I mean, was it you and Sarah and a handful of other people saying we need to do this? Let's really do this. I mean, what happens between you saying that to the audience and then Lilith Fair starting?
I think it started with the Fumbling Towards Ecstasy tour in 95 and that reaction, and then Sarah and I talking about it, and then her management talking about it. Then she wanted to create that prototype. And I believe it was Suzanne Vega and Lisa Loeb that came in with us in those early dates.
Yeah.
I know we were at UC Berkeley in that shell. It's like kind of a depression in the earth. Like
Yeah.
we played there, and things just kept going so well. It's like naming something. We were naming it. So, and I was there, and maybe my naivete
Yeah.
and my timing, some confidence in just being there, ignorance, it led to speaking out. That's what we have to do. We just have to speak. Otherwise, you will always be taken advantage of, right? You will always be used.
It's clear that you use your platform to speak. I mean, I don't even get the sense that well, I don't know. I don't know if you see that you have a responsibility to speak because you have a platform, or if it's just a natural thing that you do. It's why you stopped singing standards, because you had things to say rather than singing other people's words. You wanted to say your own piece. But do you feel that it's your responsibility? Sometimes you have to think, somebody needs to name this. This is not being talked about. I need to talk about X, Y, or Z.
I think at the time it intuitively came to me,
Yeah.
that feeling. I don't think there are enough artists talking about what digitization has done to the monetization of music. I think it's strange that we all kind of broadcast our wrapped Spotify campaigns, which I try not to do, because it's absurd. It's an exercise in absurdity of broadcasting how many. It's a little vulgar to broadcast how many people listen to you, but it's also, we are paid what, 0.00005 cents on a stream, and any employee working for Spotify makes more than any top artist played on Spotify. So there are lots of things I could speak about.
Right.
That
Well,
one
no,
just comes to mind.
I had never thought about that. Not only is it vulgar, but it's kind of absurd in the sense that it's sort of like as indentured servants were bragging about how many sandwiches we were forced to make for somebody, and not get paid on them or whatever. It's like it's a
Yes.
strange thing.
We are so duped. We are so
duped.
hoodwinked. It's all absurd.
Yeah.
The Grammys are absurd. The awards are absurd. Do you make good art? Do you feel good about your truth? Like that's,
Yes.
Of course, that's what we have to get back to. It's like, why don't we have a class action lawsuit, gathering the artists together, becoming a force against old record contracts that have us piled in debt that we could never pay off because the budgets were so high in the 90s, and we're trying to pay that off with fractions of
0.0005,
a
right,
penny. Right.
out of your royalty.
Right.
Other than Taylor Swift, you're the only person I've seen do this. You, and maybe other people are doing this too. You recut your hits.
I did that in 2016. I released.
Oh, so you did it before Taylor started doing it.
I did, but what she has done
Yeah.
has made it common conversation.
Yeah.
It's radical what she did. I'm so proud of her. Like what she's done has helped everybody.
Incredible. I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter who is a loyal Taylor Swift Swiftie and really tries to only listen to Taylor's version of the records, and she and her friends honor that and respect it and can speak about it, and they have a much more literacy about the record business. Maybe they don't know the finer points of publishing or whatever, but they understand that this is a deal that was not favorable to one of their favorite artists, and they want to do what their artist is asking them to do. Listen to this version. I guess I can think of other people who had recut things here and there, but you, from what I could tell, if I was listening to the two versions, you really just went back in and made a version that if you liked the original, you'll like this.
Yeah.
You didn't like reinvent the wheel. You didn't do a
No.
new update. You just, here, if you like this song, I want to give you a way to listen to it, and it's the same experience, really almost exactly the same experience.
We are fairly sonically identical.
I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. I want to know right now, what will it be? I don't wanna wait for our lives to be over. Will it be? Yes, so will it be? Sorry.
It's very impressive.
And that was the mission, to be forensic, really. That's because I don't see anything from those masters.
Yeah.
And for years, they were just used without my consent.
And licensed
Oh, yes.
All the licensing, all the...
Because I couldn't approve. I didn't have that approval right. So they were just used and used.
But you had publishing.
I had publishing. My percentage of the publishing,
Right.
yes. And I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And those are finer points of music deals that the general public would tire to hear. But we do not own our masters.
Right.
And you don't see any of those royalties if you are considered in debt, which you are if you were signed to those contracts in the 90s because your royalty rate is such shit.
And you're recouping out of your royalty rate.
You're recouping
essentially.
out of your royalty
Yeah,
rate.
which is insane.
Which is insane. It's a sharecropper deal.
Yeah.
It's like pennies, fractions of pennies
Yeah.
on dollars of enormous budgets. Every car you took, every meal you had, every photo shoot, every anything.
Right. And of
payola.
course, right. We'll call the car for you. There's a car waiting for you. There's a meal
Yes.
here for
Oh,
you.
we'll
Eat
take
this
care
meal.
of it.
Yes. And the label, not to get too deep in the weeds, but the label has recouped because they're recouping out of wholesale price,
Oh,
not out of
yes.
your royalty. So the math is funny.
Oh, they're well recouped. They are well recouped. Like many, 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 many times over.
Yeah. And you're still in debt.
And still in debt.
So I was extremely impressed. If we can talk a little bit about how you forensically went in. I mean, did you have access to the multi-tracks of the original records?
No, and I might somewhere on my shelf, but I didn't do it for that. Just using ears and
Just using ears.
memory. Yeah. And Jay, using some of the same musicians and we tend to remember, like if we hear our parts, I played that toy snare on Feel in Love, like
The snare drum
Right.
sound, I mean, he must have played the same drums.
he
or a lot of
sometimes he
them.
did. Sometimes he did. One he sold, but he was pretty accurate.
Pretty
we were
slick.
pretty accurate. I mean, I don't want to wait. It's pretty hard to tell, actually.
Yeah.
And I want approval rights over that of those masters now, and I want to be able to benefit financially so I can still be an artist in the world and survive.
Yeah. I think it's if you have the patience to do it or the inclination or the will to do it, because there's a lot of things you can do with your
work.
time. When I asked you if you feel a responsibility to speak about things, I realized that was kind of apropos of the Lilith Fair conversation. But I guess I was just thinking about just the subject matter of what you write about. You're speaking your truth, but you also write about sort of larger things about what's happening on the planet, about what's happening politically, about what's happening with the environment. I mean, all of that is kind of subtext in these songs. Is that just what you're thinking about? I mean, did you sit down and say, like, I want to write a record that speaks to the challenges and the horrors of life today? Or is it, no, these are my challenges and my struggles today?
Oh, a day doesn't go by that I'm not thinking about it. And I try to read the New York Times.
Yeah.
Like I try to touch upon the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal every day. I try to stay. And sometimes it's so depressing and I have to fast sometimes to kind of grow my goodness and my muse inside again. But I do try that. And also what's happening like in the Anthropocene, what's happening to the innocents on the planet, other species that cohabitate with our species. That is truly, if there is sin, that is sin, that we are consciously continuing what we do to be eliminating. Like I read there's a handful of vaquitas left in the Baja Peninsula, the Bay of California there. And there's just a couple hundred, maybe not even, right whales traversing along the Atlantic coastline and so on and so forth. Maybe a couple hundred pumas and orangutans, what we're doing with palm oil. That really hurts my heart. Animal welfare and us not looking at these lives and thinking that their life is equal to our life, that we are somehow superior, that evolution, Darwin's sense of evolution is linear. It's not linear. We are not the end all be all. We are upright. We do have large frontal lobes. There's a lot of good about that, but there's a lot of blindness. It's circular. It's cyclical. We are all interrelated, and lest they perish, we shall too perish. We just will, because we won't have the ecosystem and the support of all the forest and the medicines from the forest and the plains and the plants and to make it a healthy planet for us to live on.
Yes.
So that infects my thinking every single day, and I almost feel it like a moral obligation to weave in my sense of duty to speak into my music. Otherwise, I am an entertainer. I am not truly an artist if I don't speak about these things. I take on the mantle as loaded as it is, as beat up as I get for doing that.
That's what I'm asking about. I mean, that's exactly it. That is a distinction that is not often made. It is alluded to, the difference between an artist and an entertainer, but I think you have some guiding principle that you see as the distinction between being an artist and being an entertainer.
I do. And I think about that a lot. I don't think it's any accident or coincidence that those that really last do make commentary on that. They do write about that. The John Lennons and the Nina Simones and the Billie Holidays and the Marvin Gayes and the Bob Marleys and the, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I could go on, right? It's no coincidence. They're talking more about more than just, oh, woe is me, my boyfriend dumped me.
Yes.
Right? They are speaking for those that cannot speak. So I take that heavy. And also I think a lot about songwriting because I've had to teach it. I've had to design courses at Berklee College of Music. I've been...
Are you still teaching at Berklee?
I still am. I'm a visiting scholar, so I have a more fluid schedule. Thank you, Berklee. And I have been a professor there too. And I've had to design songwriting courses, so I take it very seriously. And I think about the responsibility of what's involved. And I really make that delineation to my students. I want them to think about that. And I have them write songs for social justice.
Yeah. This maybe can lead us to a question that was on my mind when I was thinking about where you came from and the world that you came out of. You said you're a tortoise. Although your ascent was actually pretty fast when it happened, and your development happened in its own time. You were raised in a kind of a slow world. You described being tied to a rope and left out in the garden, which is a kind of crazy image. I mean, I just wonder if that's even...
I know, I feel guilty mentioning that because my mom, now it's a different...
It's a different time,
It's a different time. It was the late 60s and 70s, God.
But, that patience, and also like I heard in this other interview recently where you talked about how you didn't have easy access even just to the radio to know what was popular on the radio. So the music was just whatever was in the house.
I didn't find the Beatles till my 20s, I would have to, I'd take the train and then the T to the Coop in Harvard Square, which was like Mecca for me because they had an international section. And if in the 80s, I didn't love all that stuff coming out of LA in the 80s. It was really slick. Yes, some of it, but I really was excited about what was coming out of the UK a lot. So that would be Peter Gabriel and the Blue Nile and Kate Bush and stuff. And I found that by going to the Coop where they would let you listen to albums. So it took a lot of work to find music then.
You had to seek it out. You had to find it and identify what you liked, and never mind find what your sound is going to be and what your, approach is going to be to all of that. If you're teaching at Berklee today, you're interacting with kids who are on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. It's just like unlimited access to all things at all times. It doesn't matter where you're from on the planet at this point, really. Do you think that is having any influence? I'm not asking you to be critical even, but just do you see a distinction in the way kids are consuming music, developing, the differences between how you came to it and what you see with, and you said you think this generation understands you and you understand them maybe better than your own generation, but it's a huge difference in where you came from and how you developed.
There's two things. One is that you spoke of the career, how it did happen very quickly for me. You mentioned that, and I didn't like that, and I had to step away. So let it fall away, let people forget that a little bit, which was dangerous because people were just associating me with the hits for a while. So, and I needed to just kind of quietly go about my business and make my own legacy of artwork, which now finally is catching up to me. And I have a catalog, which I can say, this is me. I'm all of this. I'm all of these things. It takes time to do that. It takes time and patience, and it hurt a lot too, not being invited, not being seen. And I felt very unseen for many years. But now I'm with the generation that's my children's generation. They are raised in the age of the internet and they have everything at their disposal, just like you said. And on one hand, it gives them more access to the masters and reverence for the masters, which is wonderful. And I think what millennials brought in with the Me Too movement was radical. And I felt so much more understood, seen. It even changed my thinking. And it even led to me being vulnerable and I suppose like coming out in a sense and saying, I don't identify strictly as straight. Now, if we want to reframe it now that yes, I'm married to David and I love him and I'm so fortunate, but that's not all that I am. And it became more fluid. It became more conversational. Me Too happened. It affected my thinking, my writing, my being. So I'm profoundly grateful for who they are. And they've influenced me and I've learned from them. They've been my teachers, ironically. It's beautiful to try to be in a humble place. Yes, they are exasperating too sometimes as students. Yes, like the hubris sometimes, like, oh my God, you don't know. But also to see like they're just so loaded with hormones too, like, and to see also hormones being such an affect in our bodies and therefore our consciousness. And also for me, where I am at 55, how hormones change. And you see women fortified, postmenopausally and hormones changing, and that changes our being. And, in certain cultures, women then become in the inner tribe, in the inner sanctum of politics at that point, right? They become elder spokeswomen or invited to the table for their thinking. And whereas you're young, the common denominator of these incredible young women I see in the classroom, brilliant young women, they don't raise their hands when I ask a question. And the boys in their man spread, they often just blurt out answers and they could be wrong. It's so funny. So the common denominator for these brilliant young women is a lack of self-esteem and lack of self-confidence. So my MO is like, I am always going to be trying to be fortifying self-confidence in young women. That's what we need. We need them to feel entitled to their voice. If they feel anything suspect in their body, because our minds trick us, our bodies tell the truth, they're old and they're wise. If you feel anything in your body that's trying to tell you something, listen to it, self-advocate. And for the young men, like they are changing too in the most beautiful way, right? And that's temperance and that's listening and allowing their anima, their inner feminine side, so that we can all kind of aspire to be more gender neutral in a soul, in our soul sense. So
I think that is such a beautiful answer, and I'm particularly struck, and I'm sure I will remember the idea that as we get older, it's easy to look at the next generation as people that are supposed to learn from our experience. And that, I mean, I think you said earlier in this conversation, you love the beginner's mind. And if you're going to walk through the world with that mindset, that means that you're also in tune to what we can learn from younger people. And I love the idea that, yes, of course, that dialogue unlocked, breaking through the boundaries of the binary, unlocked the possibility for all generations, not just the generations that named it, but anybody who happens to be on the planet when that conversation is taking place.
Absolutely. These boxes, whether they be gender boxes, jazz boxes, race boxes, generational boxes. Yes. We're all a human family.
Yeah. Is it possible, has it been possible for you in your lifetime to maintain that tortoise-like slowness, isolation, or introversion in the face of all the sort of the speed of the rest of the world around you? I mean, the world is taking place online 24 hours a day.
I mean, I'm online. I try, but yes, I do live a little bit in the woods.
Yeah.
And I'm wickedly introverted at home. You know, here I am speaking to you and I'm doing my stuff in support of my album. And I'm actually really happy to do that right now. And I feel like it's aligning with all that I am in my life right now. But given my druthers, I would be, I'm a homey introvert, definitely.
Well, Paula Cole, thank you for coming out from the house to talk to me today. It's really such a pleasure.
It's such a pleasure, Leo.
There she was, my friends, Paula Cole. They say that inspiration is where you find it, and today I found it in this interview. when Paula talked about being tied to the tree in her front yard as a little girl singing "So Big, So Big." As I was putting this episode together, I became, in her words, pregnant with song. So I quickly knocked this little tune out, borrowing a bit from her. And who knows, maybe it'll be my hit. Either way, I'll be back in your headspace before you know it with another deep dive. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.
She was alone a lot, tied to her family tree, staring up at the sky. When a song is all you've got, it's a song that can set you free, and it's a song that can take you for a ride. Out of this fire and into the frying pan, she stepped into the light. She would dream so big, so big. She dreamed so big back then. She would dream so big, so big. Will she dream big again? She walked out onto the stage, knowing how far she'd come and thinking how far she'd go. Well, fame can become a cage when you're something to everyone. You can forget what you know. She didn't pray, but learned how to say amen, then put on another show. She would dream so big, so big. She dreamed so big back then. She would dream so big, so big. Will she dream big again? Will she dream big? There were handshake deals and spinning wheels and some friends that slipped away. It takes time to speak your mind and find the courage to say that you dream so big, so big. She dreamed so big back then. She would dream so big, so big. Will she dream big again? Will she dream big again? Will she dream big again?
This has been a WBGO Studios production. To learn more about WBGO Studios' award-winning podcasts, special concerts, live streams, and more, visit wbgo.org/studios.